Without further ado, I want to introduce our esteemed moderator, Judith Shept with NJII, the New Jersey Innovation Institute, correct?
Right.
Okay, I got it right. Judith, take it away.
Great. Thank you. It is really a delight for us to be here to talk about investing in the voice first space. And we have really a great panel of investors who are going to be able to talk about different funds that they have and different ways that you as startups are going to be able to attract investment from these organizations. Additionally, after this session and after the welcome reception up in the basketball practice area, we're going to have startup companies who are going to be there who are going to get a chance to actually pitch to you guys. So hopefully some of them are listening to some of these tips that we have. Now, the New Jersey Innovation Institute, I know you heard about it earlier this morning, but one of the things that's really a hallmark of what we do is really working with early stage entrepreneurs and scale-up companies. We have a Tech and Life Sciences Business Incubator on our campus, the Enterprise Development Center, so we've got a lot of ways that we can work with and support startup companies. And what we'd like to do first is let each of our panelists introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the kind of funding and support that they make available for entrepreneurs. So we'll start with you, Kathleen.
Sure, happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I think you'll join me in my surprise at the beautiful facility.
Thank you.
It's just amazing. Congratulations to NJIT on the opening of this tremendous space and for welcoming all of us here to Newark. I work, as Judith said, for the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, so a state authority with the mission purpose of growing jobs in New Jersey. And within that organization, my goal is growing New Jersey-based technology and life science companies. So we have a gambit of financial resources to help companies grow in the state, and we know one size doesn't fit all. We have entrepreneurs that are fine with giving up equity. We have other entrepreneurs that are looking for free cash, although everybody's looking for free cash, but without any equity. So we have resources that include a fund-to-fund model. So we have investment across 14 venture funds, over $50 million invested, with a mission charge for those funds to make investments in New Jersey companies. I believe there was a speaker at some point today from the New Jersey Technology Council Venture Fund. That's one of our most active funds at the moment. Their first fund was extremely successful in both a returns perspective and a job creation perspective. So that's one vehicle. We also have a direct co-investment fund where we will go in and invest up to $250,000 alongside a venture investor in an early stage company in the state. Very aggressive terms relative to how much equity you don't have to give up and how much we look to work with the company. So for everything that we do, we want to help promote the companies that are in the state of New Jersey and make sure that you're ultimately successful. And then we also have a number of tax credits and incentives, and one of our most popular funding programs, you give up no equity, and you have—
That's great, no equity.
you have the ability to turn your losses into cash. It's commonly known as the net operating loss program in the state. The award cycle is every year at June 30. We are oversubscribed this year, first time in quite a few years. And the average award last year was over $1 million. So companies can take their losses, sell them to profitable New Jersey companies at a discount. Those New Jersey companies that are profitable then reduce their tax burden. The exchange time from application at June 30 to time of notice of award is 6 weeks. By the middle of August, you know. So I know for any of the entrepreneurs in the room that have fundraised, it's a long and tedious process. And very rarely do I know of a scenario where you can get a 6-week turnaround and not give up any equity and get an average of $1 million. So those are just a few examples of some of the funding mechanisms that we have in New Jersey, and I'd love to talk to you about more of them that are here today, and you're going to see more coming on the horizon with the new administration and Governor Murphy's focus on innovation in the state.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I don't do free cash.
Okay,
I'm Andrew Ackerman. I'm the managing director at Dream It. Raise your hand in back if you can hear me. I don't know how loud it is. In back, can you hear me? Okay, good. I won't yell then. So we're a venture fund, right? It's ironic. We're best known for our accelerator, but the Dream It Accelerator program, which has been around since 2008, is really the 1/10 of the iceberg that's above the waterline. Behind the water, or underneath the waterline, is our fund. It's a $50 million fund. It's our third fund. And we're investing in 3 areas right now: urban tech, health tech, and secure tech. We only invest in companies that go through our program, but since we focus on slightly later stage companies, by which I mean pre-Series A companies, we've actually changed the offer and the program structure such that it's, number one, not a large equity chunk to get in. The main thing we get is the right to invest in the round when you come out. And it's also partly remote, because a lot of our companies are not 3 or 4 people with an idea or a cocktail napkin or an MVP, but rather 10 or 20 people with a going concern and revenues $100,000, $1 million, $2 million per year. So that's where we play. That's what we look for. And come to me. I'd love to chat with you if you're in any of those 3 areas.
So how much equity does a company give up when they join?
We don't work that way.
You don't work that way.
So
okay.
the standard, here's $50,000 for 8%. That's a good deal for maybe a seed stage company, but our guys don't do that. We don't invest any money at the beginning of the program.
Okay.
We invest at the end of the program, and not even just at the end of the program, when you actually raise your next round. We have the right to be the last money in. That's
so
how we work.
you've really kind of taken that traditional accelerator model and kind of flipped it a little bit.
Yeah, we don't like to do anything the same way too many times, so every so often we just blow it up.
Okay. Great. Allison?
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Williams, and I'm the director of MVP Labs, which is part of Newark Venture Partners. Newark Venture Partners has been here for 2 years. It came together from 7 corporations based in Newark and the near vicinity who really wanted to see Newark participate in the excellent tech revolution that we've been experiencing. So together with our 7 corporate LPs, we have a $45 million fund. Over the past 2 years, we've invested in over 40 companies. We've deployed about $13 million of capital. Our portfolio now employs over 350 people in the city of Newark, over 600 people nationwide. We're thrilled by the success of our companies, and it's really just the beginning for us. The fund is structured as 2 investment arms. The first one is MVP Labs, which is what I run. MVP Labs is what we call a bridge to seed program. We invest in 10 companies every spring and fall. They come and work from our co-working space, which is located on the 7th floor of the Audible building. We provide a variety of resources, from one-on-one support in sales, marketing, finance, and strategy, to weekly networking opportunities with our LP community and our venture network. At the end, we have an awesome demo day event, which is usually at the Prudential Center, where we bring the Newark community together, as well as our investor community. And we are really proud to say that 65% of our participants raise an institutional seed round at the end of the program. The other arm of the fund is our direct investment arm, where we invest in seed and Series A deals up to $1 million. Another big benefit of the Labs program is that after you go through the Labs program, you are prioritized for the direct investment arm, so it's great to get that follow-on investment from us. I do want to mention that we are currently recruiting for our fall cohort, which starts on September 12th. We're looking for B2B companies with 10 to 40K in monthly recurring revenue. If you're interested, please come see me after this. We also have an application on our website.
Great. Thank you. And I can tell you, having gone to a couple of those demo days, they are really super fun, and they even let you go out on the ice and do a little
Yes, we do.
hockey practice for those who are adventurous enough. David?
Hi, I'm David Beisel. I'm a co-founder and partner of NextView Ventures. We are a seed stage venture capital firm. We have offices both in New York City as well as in Boston, but we invest throughout the country. We're investing out of our 3rd fund. It's a $50 million fund, and we take what we call a high conviction, hands-on approach to seed stage investing. So we typically will either lead or co-lead rounds. Our typical check size is about $1 million into a $2 to $3 million seed round. And then we'll take either a board seat or an active board observer role to really work with our companies in our portfolio to figure out what are the seed stage milestones that need to be accomplished over the next 12 to 18 months. And we work really collaboratively to help our portfolio companies optimize their Series A fundraising process. We have a thematic approach around our firm and our fund around what we call the everyday economy. And the idea is we're investing in startups which are taking best-in-class technology and then applying it to people's everyday problems. And so about 2/3 of our investments are consumer-facing and about 1/3 are kind of B2B2C. And it all is around the idea of what's the end user experience for consumers. I've been personally interested in the voice space for the last 2 or so years. I've published a marketing playbook for Alexa Skills. I've published a map of the voice startup ecosystem, and have been kind of really proactively looking at trying to invest in both conversational interface companies as well as consumer-facing voice-first startups.
Great. And Donna is currently an entrepreneur, but previously had been involved in investing. So Donna, tell us a little bit about the kinds of things you used to look for in investing and a little bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. So I'm a recovering investor. Excuse me. Formerly with Edison Ventures for about 10 years, so was looking, was on the VP of development there, and so business development, so looked at thousands and thousands of companies over the years. Not voice at the time, so I don't know that it makes a lot of sense for me to spend a lot of time on it since I'm not actively investing, but I am on the entrepreneurial side. This is my 5th startup now in an operational role, and so happy to kind of share war stories with you.
Great, great. So we've heard you talk about when you get deals, there's lots of deal opportunities that you can look at. You know, Donna mentioned when she was at Edison Ventures, perhaps 1,000 deals a day, or not a day, a year that would come across. You know, Kathleen, you get lots of opportunities, and I know your staff is out looking, other people from the EDA are out scouting early stage companies, and I'm sure, you know, as well for the other funds, there's lots of churn. What makes a particular deal attractive to you, and when should someone start to come and talk to you about what they're doing? Because we always try to tell our entrepreneurs, you have like one chance to make that first impression. And we also know it's a relatively small community, so believe it or not, we all talk to each other. You know, we say, have you seen this company? Or here's a company that's part of my portfolio that we'd like you to talk to. So when should companies be coming to talk to you, and what makes them attractive for you to be investing in?
Stage-wise, I think
Yeah.
you guys invest the earliest. Why
Yeah.
don't you start, and then David, and then me, and I think Edison was a little later, so then you can take off after me.
Fair.
So I'm happy to start off. So at the EDA, we say to folks, come talk to us early. And we will, as Judith referenced, we have a team that works with the emerging technology and life science companies in the state. You know, we have a lot of companies that aren't quite ready for prime time. And we will candidly share some of that feedback with you. We run an event twice a year called New Jersey Founders and Funders, where we give you the opportunity to present in front of investors. We've had a couple successful checks be written as a result of that event. Newark Venture Partners actually is one of our fund-to-fund portfolio companies, and they participate in that event with us. But as Judith said, you get one shot for a first impression, so we remind entrepreneurs of that all the time. We also have kind of community building events for the companies that were not ready to write checks in. You know, as Judith said, we do talk. So one of Allison's partner reached out to us and said, do you have any companies in this space and look like this? We sent them a list of 3 companies that we know in New Jersey that are in the midst of raising a round that fit that profile. So because of our tentacles as a fund-to-fund investor, where we give money to the venture funds and then the venture funds invest in the companies, we tell people to come talk to us early, talk to us often, build that relationship with the EDA. Generally speaking, our tax credits and incentives help earlier on for companies before they're ready for a direct investment from us.
So Kathleen, if someone came and talked to you and they said, we're going to achieve this in the next 6 months, a smart thing for them to do might to then also be following up 6 months later and say, I told you I was going to get to here, here's where I'm now at, to kind of keep you apprised of what's happening?
Yes, and we keep files and everybody we talk to, so if you tell us you're going to do it, we're going to pull out what you told us you were going to do and check against that. We want entrepreneurs who are going to shoot for the rafters, no pun intended, and we'll manage and see how you do against those expectations. So there has to be some sense of realism in there as well. We, for the most part, before we'll make a direct investment, talk to a company for a year and a half, 2 years. So it's a measured conversation on a regular basis on how you're doing against your plan.
Great. Allison?
It's a great question because there are so many startups out there. At MVP, we really take a proactive approach in reaching out to companies, and we do this we have a particular process for doing this. Well, first of all, we have 7, as I mentioned earlier, we have 7 corporate investors: Audible, Panasonic, Dun & Bradstreet, TD Bank, Prudential, RWJ, Barnabas Health, and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. And all 7 of our investors are very motivated for MVP and our portfolio companies to be successful. So we have a great relationship with our LPs. So we work very closely with them to understand what are issues and problems that they're facing in their business, so we can start develop theses internally about areas where we want to proactively invest. So we have those conversations regularly throughout the year. We're constantly building out our theses internally. So for this cohort, we have particular opinions on fintech AI, health tech, future of work, HR tech, and voice. So those were particular areas where we have a perspective and a point of view. And then myself and the rest of our team, we go out and we get in front of companies. We go to many of the events that are happening throughout the city, New Jersey, the surrounding area. We are looking on Crunchbase, PitchBook for companies that we want to proactively approach. So that's kind of our way of taking this really big universe and our way to attempt to make it a little bit smaller. As far as my advice to entrepreneurs, my main piece of advice would be, reach out when you're ready. Reach out when you're able to have a very thoughtful conversation with an investor. Even if you're too early or too late, let's say if you reached out to me, if you came to me but you weren't quite you were too early for labs, if you made a good impression and I like the way you presented your company, we will just track you and stay in touch. And I would say, that way you don't burn that bridge by just being prepared for that conversation.
And I think the other thing, and then we'll get to David and Andrew and Donna, is when some of these people ask questions and you're going to follow up with them, you want to follow up in a fairly prompt time frame. If they've asked a question, you say, I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. You don't want to get back a month later. You really want to be relatively prompt in your feedback, because I can tell you, we had a situation with one of the companies we had been working with in our business incubator. An investor had asked a question. They didn't get back to them. I ran into the investor someplace else and I said, how's the conversation going with the company? And they said, well, they never got back to me. So it's important to really, as you say, kind of have those managed, measured conversations.
Except for those companies where you're thrilled that they don't get back to you.
Well, then you're probably not asking them a question.
Are we done yet? No, sorry. I'll be nice. David, it's yours.
Our investment decision-making process is very simple. We look at 3 things, and 3 things in this order: team, market, product. The word for team, we look at just that, a team, not just an individual. We've invested in 75 companies over the last 8 years. 74 of them have been founding teams, not founders. The one was an exception where we had a previous relationship with that founder. And we look for something in the team around authenticity. Is your past experience, not in terms of duration of years, but is your past experience bring about an insight as to why you have an unfair advantage to succeed with this startup? And then market, is it a potential for venture scale? And then product, we use the word a little bit more generally, and just like, given what the amount of resources which you've had to date, what have you created? So if you've been working at this for only 3 months and you've only raised 50K, you should be at a different place than you've been working at it for the last year and you've raised 500K to date. So we grade, so to speak, on a curve based on the amount of resources that you've had and the amount of time you've been working on a product. For us, it's about a third, a third, a third. A third of our investments are completely a PowerPoint plan and a team. A third have some product in the market, but not yet metrics. And a third of the time, it's metrics up and to the right, but they're not yet ready for an $8 million Series A.
Cool. Okay. I mean, I've actually been on both sides of this divide. When I first joined DreamIt, we were a more traditional pre-seed program, so we were looking more for companies like you guys were. And I would often come to you, David, and say, do you have any companies that are almost but not quite ready for you?
Right.
Now it's almost switched entirely the other way, because now that most of our companies have raised a seed round, and our goal is to take them to an A or perhaps a seed extension in some cases, our best referrals come from investors who come to us and say, we've just written them a check for $1 million. I want them to go through your program so you find them more customers and we can get them to a Series A together and co-invest then. And that's also where not taking a large chunk of equity up front makes it possible, because no one wants to dilute themselves that way.
Yep.
So that's one of the big changes in my life over the past couple of years about how we find companies. We still get a lot of inbounds, and part of the reason is there just aren't that many companies, accelerators / VC funds, combinations like that, who play in the pre-A round. It's pretty much you're out of an accelerator and then you just raise money from a VC fund. So because we kind of inhabit that space, a lot of companies come to us because to a large degree we're the only game in town. And we're vertically focused, as I said, in urban tech, which, just in case you're wondering, is construction, real estate, and the parts of smart city that don't suck, health tech, and secure tech, which is physical and cybersecurity. So if you're a company in those areas, you get the benefit of a program that's specialized on those areas of expertise and have dozens or more relationships with the customers who are looking for companies at that stage, not to talk to, but to actually pilot with and buy from. So it's kind of a unique position. So we get a lot of inbound that way. But that said, I don't just sit back and wait for people to refer companies. I still end up hitting Crunchbase pretty hard. We go out there, we call it the sniper and the shotgun.
Great, and so Donna, having raised funds, can you give some advice about how to approach and what you have found successful as you've gone out to raise funds for the 5 firms?
So, absolutely. So I think what's really important, and I agree on your top 3 from a management standpoint, I'd love to see a CEO who's driven, a team that's driven, but also even a very sales-centric CEO, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to tell your story. And if your CEO can tell your story, then everyone below him can tell the story. So getting your story in line and having a very clear, concise, this is where we fit in the market, this is how we differentiate, this is why we're going to make a mark, is extremely important for that quick elevator pitch, for that quick introduction or cocktails, talking to an investor. And so being able to make that point quickly and early when you're speaking to an investor, critical. I think the other part of it is just you really need to be honest. I think so many times entrepreneurs get that opportunity and they want to tell the investor what they think they want to hear. The reality is they just want to hear the truth. They just want to know where you're at. You should have good answers, but I think they just really want to hear, where is the company today? If they ask you, who's a competitor? You cannot tell them that you have no competitors. There's always a competitor. Somebody can build something themselves. They can build it internally. So that's an honest answer. So I think, those kinds of things are critical, to be really honest and upfront with the investor when you get that opportunity, because that being authentic, being genuine, will actually go a long way.
Great, and I think one of the things you heard from all of these investors is that they're really somewhat engaged with the companies that they're investing in. They're not just writing you a check and then saying, okay, give me the report card a year later, tell me what's happened. We've heard from all of them that they've talked about the connections that they're able to help make with other partners within the ecosystem who are either investors in their funds or others that they're aware of. So that's a really critically important factor is these connections that the firms are being able to help you make as you move your way along. I can tell you we had a conversation, Kathleen may not remember this, but one of our companies was in due diligence, and I had asked, well, how's the due diligence process going? And she said, well, you know, they're kind of getting stuck in the financial due diligence because honestly, the CEO and his co-founder were very technical people in the biotech space. They really didn't understand the financial model that was associated, and as your team started, you know, poking and asking a few questions about the financial model, they couldn't answer those questions. That then caused us to go back and really create a program that I created with Michael Ehrlich from our School of Management on financial management and business models so that our entrepreneurs would be able to have intelligent conversations with these kinds of folks. So I'd like to ask a little bit about, we talked a little bit on some of the pre-calls about voice, and what aspects about voice and voice technology do you find particularly exciting, and how does voice play into some of the other traditional fields that we have as an interface for accomplishing kinds of things? So where is voice exciting you with some of the companies that you're seeing? So we'll take it in any order.
I'll jump in. So, you know, we look at it first from the industry perspective, and then if they use voice where appropriate, and that opens up a business model, that's exciting. You know, I think a little bit, I like to think in patterns, right? So I look at like what's happened before and what does this feel like? And right now, voice feels a little bit like mobile when it first came out. There was a point in time when a VC fund could come out, and I have one specific in mind, and they would say, we are a mobile VC, we invest in mobile plays. And within 3 years, they couldn't say that anymore because everything was mobile, right? It was like saying I invest in companies with a telephone. It made no sense anymore. And I think we're in that process with voice. It's new and exciting, and there are some platform plays to be had, but within a very short period of time, voice is just going to be one other channel or one other feature that you add to a product when necessary or when advantageous. So, you know, with that in mind, I look through things in like the real estate space. There are huge efficiencies to be had in automating, say, interactions with your property managers. My sink is broken, right? Things like that, or I want to schedule an appointment. Voice paired with natural language processing and AI on the back end has a huge opportunity there to just free the consumer from having to deal with people who, frankly, are overworked and don't want to be on the phone anyway, and freeing those other people from having to deal with, okay, I'll schedule that appointment for you for Monday. So there's a lot of that on the real estate side. I don't see as much on the construction side, to be honest, but of course on the smart city side, there is some very interesting stuff way down on the horizon where you know, you can almost imagine that all those video cameras that we're now starting to figure out how do we use with image recognition. Imagine a pervasive network of microphones with speech recognition and the kind of data you could get on what people are talking about, what problems are arising, what emergencies are arising. So those are, I don't even think, a glimmer in the eye of a lot of startups yet, but that's kind of where I see the ball heading on the smart city side.
So I'll jump in. So in prepping for this panel, went back and looked at companies that we had funded that had, you know, voice as a primary business. And, you know, my team knows that I often hear voice and cringe because the first big loss I had as an investor was in a voice technology company. So it takes a while to get over that first big loss. And when I went back and looked, there was companies in the early 2000s building voice technologies in New Jersey. And when we think about, you know, Alcatel-Lucent and Bell Labs starting in New Jersey, a lot of that was voice technology. And so I'll bring up a name from when Donna was back at Edison, and Voxware right? A voice technology down in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, that uses that technology for picking in inventory. And we're seeing a lot of that today, right? In artificial intelligence technology and in scenarios where security is really important. Voice is another security layer. In scenarios where folks can't, it's not efficient to use your hands, right? Where mobility is really important. So we're seeing that across labs in the state. As I mentioned, Voxware in New Jersey has been around for a long time in figuring out how to be efficient in warehouse management and logistics. Think about the FedEx and UPS guys. There's technology there for them for voice. So the mobility factor, I think, is really what's the lever that's elevating the interest in voice. You know, people knew the technology was coming, have been working on it in a long time, and maybe we're ahead of the curve. And now that we see all of the demands from consumers on everything being mobile, it's enhancing the opportunity for voice.
Great, Allison?
Sure. Yeah, we're obviously very interested in voice. You know, when you think about it, you think about all the different things you do all day. You realize, well, it'd be just so much easier if I could talk to this than actually type it on my phone or on my computer. Again, going back to our LPs, we see that they're coming up with certain point solutions from a productivity standpoint, customer service standpoint, connectivity standpoint. You have TD Bank, you know, they're really investing in voice. You know, if you want to get your checking account balance, how can you say it versus type a code over SMS? From our healthcare LPs, they're interested in a point solution for elderly care. It's, you know, for someone who's elderly and not as mobile, it's harder for them to get to an iPad to communicate to their doctor. How can voice be used to solve that problem for them? So we're working closely with our LPs to kind of understand where voice can really solve issues for them. As far as our existing portfolio, we have invested in a company called Veritonic, which just closed a sizable seed round, and they are in the voice space where they optimize voice for marketing content. So companies that want to now be advertising on podcasts, they are going to, their technology, they have machine learning technology that helps them optimize what is the best voice for a certain consumer, which we think is really interesting. And they actually just launched a pilot program with Audible, again, one of our LPs, which is very exciting.
Great.
So as I mentioned before, next year we look at investing in startups which are affecting people's everyday lives. And something like, I don't know what the exact stat is, 40 million Alexa-enabled devices will have been sold by the end of 2018. They're selling dots and six-packs. There's an Alexa Everywhere strategy by Amazon to basically subsidize a cheap speaker and microphone in every single thing that you plug into a wall. To me, pervasive access to the cloud through the most natural human interface possible, that's extremely powerful. It's very similar to the beginning of the mobile era. You said eventually everything became mobile, but for the first 5 years of the mobile era, new companies that were born, for example, Uber, that just took advantage of the new platform in ways that were not previously capable. And so if I knew what the killer app would be beyond, I mean, currently the killer app for consumers on voice is music. If I knew what the next killer app was going to be, I would just start it myself. But I'm an investor, and so we're looking for those skills or those companies which are creating and consumer experiences that are going to transform our lives.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that we're recording all of this information and that exhaust, what I would call the exhaust, you know, all of this information that's taken from that, what you can actually do with that. I think that the sentiment analysis, all of the natural language processing, AI that can be behind all of these things, voice is just the edge of what can actually go across the entire errors and errors of technology. So to be able to kind of start to be able to connect and thread all of those things together, when you think of, a customer service call comes into a into a bank, if somebody's aggravated because they think their credit card has been stolen, being able to really be able to know how to deal with that in the moment, correct it, one and done, have a great experience with that bank is wonderful, and you want to get on and off the phone quickly and resolve it. May be very different than somebody calling into their wealth manager. They happen to be the top 7 client at an enormous bank. You want to have a nice, long relationship with that person. So if they sound frustrated on the phone, you really want to temper that because you don't want their money moving from your bank to another. So I think there's so many really exciting things that can be used in a real business fashion from a voice standpoint. So I think as we start to think the applications that can be applied and the layers of information and the connectivity between all of these things, voice can be really, really powerful to enable new work processes, new efficiencies within organizations.
So I think, kind of to build off of something that Donna said, I like listening to the TED Talks that you can find on TED.com, and one of the talks that I had listened to recently was from a physician in the UK who was actually saying by analyzing voice, it was an early indication of Parkinson's disease. Really using, to your comments, they were able to analyze someone's voice and use that as kind of a marker for some particular disease states, which really is a very interesting
I was actually going to build on that. Like, for those of you, just a show of hand, who's here, who's working on a startup using voice? Okay, cool. So I would urge you guys to think broad, right? So, a lot of what people think of in the first go around is, okay, I take out my phone and I start saying something to it. But think about what happens. You have a microphone in your pocket that's always on. So imagine if you don't pick up your phone and it's a diagnostic tool for Parkinson's. It's an always-on tool. It measures your stress, your mental health, your positivity, your negativity. It predicts what you need. Like David and I are talking about Chinese food. I take my phone out and there's already Chinese restaurants near me on it, right? So just open it up from, this is something that I have to do, to something that's always there for me, in the same way that companies like Google are just sucking up all that kind of digital detritus.
I think that's some of the benefit of voice is that you don't need the friction of taking the phone out of your pocket and swiping and then going, okay, this, that, blah, blah, blah. I think, with a lot of the skills, just evoking with just one word just brings you to where you want to be, right? And so it's a way to navigate when you know what you want. I think some of the challenges are around.
I take it a step further. You don't even need to invoke it. It should always be listening. It's a little scary. It's that frictionless.
And it should be predictive to know what you need before you know it.
Yep. So use that power for good, please.
Great. So can we talk a little bit, I guess, about some of the investments that you've made in the space? What's the best way for entrepreneurs to contact you if they're interested? Because many of you have said, hey, we are looking for funds. We're looking for people to join some of our programs that we have upcoming. What's the best way that you like to be contacted from entrepreneurs? And what do you like to be contacted with? What do you want them to, is it a deck? Is it a one sheet executive summary?
Chocolate.
Chocolate, okay.
No, very simple, just email, right? Andrew@dreamit.com. Clear subject line, short email, straight and to the point, maybe attach a one-pager if that's what you're looking for. Just do us all a favor. We all have websites. Take a look at them first, right? I don't do a lot of B2C. I don't do live local sports, so I'm not the guy to help you with that. Save us both a little bit of time. But yeah, and then be a little patient, because depending on what's going on in our lives, it could be 5 minutes or it could be 5 weeks.
I think the challenge is the best way to get attention of an investor is to get a referral from someone that's in their network, but that is a real challenge. And to some degree, it's a little bit of a test of how kind of crafty you are as an entrepreneur and how much hustle you have to be able to find a way to get introduced. That being said, I think reaching out directly that has a very tailored email that clearly shows that you're contacting this person at this firm because you've given critical thought about it goes a long way. One of the most recent investments I made earlier this year was literally a cold email but it was so tailored to, clearly had read our website and knew exactly what our thesis was around the everyday economy, and they tailored it to that, and it fits right into our thesis, and so that's why we made the investment.
Yeah, I would echo. I only help companies that are in New Jersey. I can't tell you how many times I get requests to fund California companies, New York companies, Belgium companies, and
She'll fund them if they move to New Jersey.
And I start from the point of, are you interested in locating in New Jersey? But a lot of material on our website. I will not read anything more than a 2-page executive summary. But if you email it to the EDA, it'll get to me or to my colleagues or to me directly, and we'll get somebody to follow up with you.
Same here, a well thought out email to the point, but has done the research is perfect. You can also apply to labs on our website, and we always look at all of our applications. We take a look every day. I will say, and we look at each candidate, we look at the investment on a investment basis, on a return basis. But I will say the one offer that we've given so far for the fall program, they did come to Debo Day. They did come to one of our social activities. So it was just nice to see that they really did want to be a part of the MVP family.
And I just say almost every venture capital fund or incubator has a section on their website that says exactly what they invest in. A great approach would be to say, this is why I match your investment thesis, and put very clearly why you think that you do. The other thing is, if you're going to send emails to any of these folks, make sure that your actual address and phone number and contact details are on there, because as you said, they may be in Texas and you only invest in New Jersey. And so many people leave their address off now because nobody uses snail mail. However, that's really important to a venture capital firm that only invests in either a geographical region or an industry. So having as much there so they can tell if there's even an alignment is a huge help on their end.
And I think what you've heard from all of them is also participating in the entrepreneurial community is important, so that whether you've gone to a meetup that one of them has sponsored, Newark Venture Partners and Audible have sponsored a number of meetups at your location in downtown Newark. Those are great events to go to in a casual framework, get a chance to meet people. The New Jersey EDA has a facility in North Brunswick, the Center for Commercialization for Innovative Technologies. They frequently run programs that, again, are open to the public, open to other entrepreneurs, whether it's a panel discussion on investing from foundations in the life sciences space or other programs. If you go to those events, you get a chance to meet people in this environment, and so that this is not the first time you are approaching them to do something. So at this point, I think we have a few minutes left before the keynote panel. I think we were also going to be able to take questions from the audience. So if people in the audience have any questions to ask our investors. Can't believe okay, there's somebody right up front who had a question. Right over here.
Hi, Lawrence Beta with App City Life. So we do urban tech for cities. And voice is very exciting for us just because obviously citizens want to communicate their voice to their, to their government.
To your mouth? I can't hear it.
So this is my second time I've gone through this type of a company during the dot-com days. And this is starting to remind me a lot of the dot-com days just because, we're doing voice and we're doing blockchain and we're doing AI. What gets you excited about that? I think you've all talked about that a little bit, but also what scares you about what's going on with these companies in this space? Just because there's obviously a lot of hype around voice and blockchain and AI. So just what are your thoughts about what scares you about that?
I feel about voice and blockchain and every other buzzword out there, it's a functional element. Right? And so if it opens up a new business model that didn't exist, that's very exciting. If it makes sense but is not core to the model that exists already, then okay. I'll give you, I get a lot of people pitching me startups that have existed before, but now it's with blockchain. It's an equity crowdfunding site for real estate with blockchain. You know what this is? This is fairy dust. They're sprinkling blockchain fairy dust on it. It doesn't work for me. So if you're going to sprinkle the fairy dust, like actually make it integral. Otherwise, it's just noise to me.
Yes, I think what you're also hearing is that technology is interesting. Technology is wonderful. We're here at a technology school, New Jersey Institute of Technology, but really at the end of the day, you want to understand how is the technology being used to solve a problem that somebody has, and is that a big enough problem that's going to cause these investors to say, I can see how I can make money solving that problem using this piece of the technology. The technology may be very interesting, may be very wonderful, may even be something that could be prize-winning, award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning, but what we really want to know is what's the problem that you're solving, what's the value that you're bringing to an ultimate end customer, whether it's a consumer or an enterprise customer. Other questions? I see somebody there.
I'll be right there. Hi. What advice would you give to a small startup looking at Amazon, Google, Apple as being very big players in the voice space?
Michael, say that again if you would.
What advice would you give to a small startup company looking at the voice space, which is currently, there's some very big players, Amazon, Google, Apple, certainly among them, Samsung.
So I would be worried, right? Amazon has shown in the past with some of their partners in other realms that they're willing to change the rules mid-game, right? I think it's interesting if you look at the App Store, if you look at the previous generation in mobile, both Apple and Google, they take a huge cut, right? They take, 30% cut on the App Store, but they haven't changed the rules in a decade. That's very comforting if you're trying to think about building a business model as an entrepreneur and as us as investors. Consistency is key. And so I think having these larger players in the space and within kind of the skills and ecosystem, it's going to be careful navigation.
And I would add, if you're trying to sell into Apple or Google or any of the big names, very long sales cycle, and I've seen too many entrepreneurs go out of business waiting for those sales cycle to close. There's the promise of it's coming tomorrow, and they don't have adequate cash flow. So, the old adage of don't put all your eggs in one basket, is very applicable there.
I want to be very careful. There's a large panel, so I want to use as few words as possible and say as much as possible. But let's take the Uber example that David put on the table. They didn't invent a mobile handset. They didn't invent location-based services. What they were using was largely free tools that are out there to build a whole new model. So don't think of it as going up against Amazon or Google to create better voice recognition. You will most likely lose that battle. But if you're using parts of their platform that they're giving away for free because they want to give away for free, or open source tools to put together a business that is dependent on voice in a good way, then I'm not as worried about them, because then it's like saying, Google can build anything, should I be paralyzed with fear? And the answer is clearly no.
I think there's okay.
Hi, is this on? Yes. Okay. Oh, speak into the mic. We all know it's about market size and the opportunity, et cetera. How many female founders are you seeing, and how many female founders are you funding? Have to ask the question.
I'm looking at you, but I don't know if she wants you to answer us.
Well, in our last, I'm a prior female founder, so I think it's a great question. In our prior class, we had 6 companies and there was 1 female founder. So still, not enough, but we always are looking for a diverse set of founders in all of our classes, and we're always keeping our eyes open and hope to have even more in our next cohort.
Okay, I'll tread lightly here. The difficulty I find, so first of all, I'm not a nice person, I never claimed to be. I'm not looking for any particular type of founder because I want to help out. I'm looking for great investments. Now that said, because we're not in the bubble that is the Valley, we just open our eyes and there's a lot more diverse founders, ethnically and gender-wise. Where I'm most constrained is the pipeline coming into the startup funnel. So in construction tech, I will tell you I have never seen a more white male-dominated startup funnel. On the health side, however, we are almost 50-50 in terms of female founders, including CEOs and in some cases CTOs. When we ran the ed tech vertical, it was about 30% female founders. Secure tech, I have no idea, but if I had to bet, it's not going to be as good in terms of that. What I would really like, and I feel a little bit powerless, is I'd really like to be able to pull all the way through back to those construction firms and get more female, more African American, more Latino founders into construction so they could get good 5, 10, 15 years of experience, then give them the entrepreneurial bug so they start the company. Then I would have more to choose from. But I've struggled with it for a while, and I'm not sure how much I can do at the stage in the game that I play to really influence things. And I have to admit, it's a little frustrating.
So Michael Ehrlich and I have a program that we run called Health IT Connections, and one of the things that we found as we were working with the CEOs was that our female and underrepresented minority CEOs did not have as rich a set of networking contacts as some of the white male CEOs had in terms of other people to partner with and work with, so that we found that it wasn't only getting them into some of the programs, it was really working harder with them to be able to provide the additional support to kind of retain and keep them and ensure that those businesses would ultimately turn out to be successful. And in fact, one of the women that we've worked with, who initially when she came into our program, we were a little concerned about whether she was really too early and should she be the right partner to be in the program. She has made phenomenal progress, has been able to now end up getting involved with Bayer, who has a venture fund, and really has made significant progress. So I think as female and underrepresented CEOs, you need to make sure that you're also asking and getting the additional support that you need to ensure that kind of level off the playing field. And I think Don Sebastian, who spoke on the earlier panel, talked a little bit about really making sure that everyone's interested in tech and STEM, and that kind of pulls all the way back to middle school.
It's a conversation that has to start early, right, with everybody, that this is a career choice that young folks can make, whatever their gender, whatever their nationality. And I was thinking back walking onto the campus today that last summer we had Startup Nation, Startup Girls?
Yes.
Right here on this
right.
campus.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, the conversation is happening in a new way.
Girl Startup.
Girl Startup,
Yeah.
Startup Girl, yeah. Startup Girl, I think.
Yeah.
We'll get it right. But, it's important for everybody in the room to have that conversation, that, this is a path. You don't have to go into large corporate America or banking or, there's just so many different opportunities. And, if you have the belly in your the fire in your belly, it's a great career path to control your own destiny, start a company.
Hi, it's Sean Gilligan from the UK. I've been a big fan of audio throughout the years, so traveling between the UK and America a lot, I'd be listening to hundreds of business audio books because I'm a bit sad that way. But and I've got my own book on Audible, which is flexible. It's only £1.99, but that's a side play. So I'm an international edtech entrepreneur over 15 years. Started my business in Yorkshire, age 25. And we've got offices in Chicago, Katowice in Poland, and Leeds. And I've got a bit of a dilemma because I'm a startup guy at heart. And so Web Anywhere is the international edtech e-learning company where we work with JetBlue, Medtronic, Motorola, and we have market share in the UK of maybe 2,000-3,000 schools that we control the websites and apps from. But then I've got a voice-first startup, which I think is bigger than the existing company. So my question to the investors really, being a bit of a venture capital virgin, aka I've never taken money ever, if I've invested, say, £250,000 and whatever that is in dollars into a company, is that seed round or is that Series A? And then also, how does a VC manage the conflict of interest between a bootstrapper who's got an established international business but has a startup idea that could be bigger and that sort of thing? So they're the two questions, really. At what stage am I with my startup, and how do you manage the conflict of interest, really?
So maybe I'll let David or Andrew.
Was it 250,000 pounds? Was that what you were saying?
Well, David, that's your territory.
Yeah, I would say I think about stage less in terms of what's the dollars or pounds into a company, but where are you in determining product market fit? And is the company ready to just put on capital and go? If that's the case, then you're ready for a Series A. If you still need to if something is working, but you still need some more experimental capital to figure out so you can get to the place where you just add dollars and go, then you're somewhere along the seed continuum. And seed can mean a lot of different things, from $50K to $3.5 million. But I would think of seed as the process in which you're determining, does the company have product market fit?
So I'll build on that as briefly as I can. One of the proxies for that is revenue, right? If you have no revenue, you're still looking for product market fit, obviously. If you have a certain amount of revenue and a certain number of unique customers, you kind of get the benefit of the doubt that you figured out something that works. Where it becomes complicated if you have two companies is, I've started companies before. It's brutally hard to make one succeed. I'm very wary about investing in someone who's trying to juggle two. Sometimes, and I may be reading something into your question, sometimes we find there's an established company that may be more of a service provider or a consultancy, and then they'll want to create a startup to productize what they're doing, or maybe even totally unrelated. I steer very clear of those because the founder's attention almost always gets pulled away to an immediate gig, an immediate development gig, an immediate consulting gig. So it's a recipe for the small company to wither on the vine. So if you're serious about it, I would split them up, devote resources to each, dedicated resources. They cannot be pulled in the other direction.
I would say put a manager in place on the
CEO.
legacy business. Yes,
I would say you choose. Do you want to be the CEO of the big company or the small one?
Yep.
If it's the big one, you're just the lead investor, you're the chairman of the board. Someone else is the CEO, has a lot of equity, fully incentivized. Or you cut ties and jump over, but don't straddle both.
My advice is to do that before you go talking to seed or VCs to make that decision first. You'll be much more successful.
Great. Well, I think at this point we're going to have to end for the next final keynote presentation of the day. I really would like to thank the panelists. I think they've really offered you a wealth of advice. I know most of them are going to be able to stick around a little bit for the welcome reception and the Startup Expo, so you'll have a chance to be able to speak with them later. So again, let's thank the panel.